Can you use Irish paganism to learn about Scottish paganism? Well, Dagdy Gíbhagus Fáilte. Hi, hello, and welcome. Jon O'Sullivan from the Irish Pagan School. And it might seem like a bit of an odd cast or question, but it is one that we kind of get regularly enough. A lot of people come to us and they're rather frustrated trying to trace back their history or their roots. They're trying to explore native spirituality or native spiritual practices from their ancestors in Scotland. We've actually had people ask us like, "Hey, do you know of a Scottish pagan school?" And our answer is time and again, no, I'm sorry, it doesn't exist. The Irish Pagan School only exists because myself and my partner were frustrated like everyone else and not frustrated with the misinformation that was going around about Irish native spiritual practices and how a lot of it was appropriated, twisted, and abused to prop up cults of ego. There's a lot of negative stuff that we have been riling against for years, which if you've been following us for a while, you'll be aware of. But that's been our crusade. That's been our calling. That's been the work that we've been doing for our community and for our gods and for our people and the Irish people and also the diaspora of people all around the world. But can we recommend a Scottish practitioner? Can we recommend Scottish learning? Can we educate you in Scottish cultural practices? No, we can't. And it's a little bit sad to say that. I honestly wish there was a Scottish pagan school, a Welsh pagan school, like all of these other places where I could refer people to explore spirituality and ancestry through those platforms. Maybe in the future, who knows? But can you come to us then and learn from us and then use the Irish pagan processes or pathways to explore your spirituality and Irish paganism? And I normally answer questions by saying the answer, which is the Irish tradition of not hard to say, but this one is kind of hard to say. Um, we do have a lot of very direct crossover that we can see in our mythology and also in our history between Ireland and Scotland. Um, for example, I have an excerpt here from the Lebor Gabála Érenn, the Book of Invasions, and it talks about the Numidians, which we have the Tuatha Dé Danann, who are the Irish gods. Then there's the Firbolg, was the tribe before that. Then there was the Numidians, who were the tribe before that. And so the Numidians were in Ireland, but they came under oppression from the Fumhra, the Fomorians. And so the sons of Nemed kind of fled out of Ireland. And so there's a reference here which speaks specifically about one of the sons of Nemed and where his sons and children went. And so it says, after that capture, more sons of Dela came upon them. So this is the Fomorians, with the crews of 60 ships, and they fell in mutual slaughter. The sea came up over the people of Ireland, and not one of them fled from another, so severe was the battling. None escaped but one ship, in which there were 30 warriors. They went forth, parting from Ireland, fleeing from the sickness and the taxation. Beothuk died in Ireland of the plague. His 10 wives survived him for a space of 23 years. Ibath and his son Bath went into the north of the world. Matach and Erglin and Irtuch, the 3 sons of Bion, went to Dubber and Irdabar in the north of Alba. And so the reason why I point this out is because Alba is the Irish name for Scotland. And so we have in our mythological cycle where it talks about the various lineages and family lines, this Beothuk who died of sickness in Ireland to be survived by his 10 wives, he's the son of Nemed from which the Tuatha Dé Danann claimed descent. And so in here we have the names of those sons who went to the north of the world, which is Ibath and Bath. But then it also says Matach, Erglin, and Irtuk, the 3 sons of Bon. Now, not the same Boan as in the River Boyne Boan, but this is a Bioan. I hope I'm pronouncing it right. Went to Dobber and Irdubber. Now, Dobber and Irdubber are, I don't know if they're actually places, but this is why it's worth exploring and looking into. And I haven't a translation of those specific words, but it lists those locations in Alba, specifically Alba, and Alba is very clearly Scotland in Ireland's lore and history. And Our mythology points at the existence of the tribes being in Ireland and going out of Ireland and emigrating into Scotland. So this does mean that there is a mythological connection of lineage, of tribal lineage between Ireland and Scotland. But we don't just have myth, we also have history. From the ninth to about the late seventh, ninth to seventh, pushing the eighth century Common Era, there existed a kingdom or a collection of tribes ruled by chieftains, various chieftains that went by the name the Dal Riada. The Dal Riada was the essentially it was a Gaelic kingdom. It was an Irish kingdom that covered chunks of Northern Ireland on our east coast and a lot of the west coast of Scotland all the way up. And so this was a declared Dal Riada, and it is Irish, like in predominantly those tribes were of Irish descent. Like I think it may have started with a bit of an invasion from Irish people into Scotland, but then it became its own tribal land. It became its own collection of people known as the Dal Riada. Now, it existed for those 2.5, 3 centuries, at the end of which it integrated with the Pictland people. And then we know that the Picts and the Scotti were the two main tribes in Scotland, the Scotti eventually winning out, where it became Scotland as opposed to Pictland. Um, but for a good period of time, there was this kingship across the Irish Sea between our island and the north end of the neighbor island, Scotland. So that means that we have historical precedents of cultural exchange, tribal exchange, like tribal similarity in practices. Maybe, because the only way we'd be able to have integration or connection as things grow and evolved and move down through time is if there were some correlations. And we can look at language, we can look at history, but as we move more forward in history, we also need to look at the history of oppression. Both Scotland and Ireland were conquered by the same neighbor, England, and our resources taken and our independence stolen from us in many ways. So I know Scotland had a right to choose recently with there was a push for Scottish independence, and there was a vote for whether or not to stay in Great Britain or leave Great Britain, or just Britain, because I don't think it's that great. But Scotland chose to remain, and so at least there was that narrative in more modern times. But from a certain perspective, we are both two tribes that were oppressed by the same challenging oppressor. So does this mean that, yeah, absolutely, you can use the window of Irish paganism to step in or explore Scottish paganism? No, I wouldn't say so. Because so much of Irish pagan practice is about native spirituality. It is about the land itself. It's about knowing the names of the rivers, the names of the native trees, like the connection with the people of the other world via the mounds that exist in Ireland. There is so much that is uniquely and specifically about the landmass, the peoples, and the tribes of the island itself that you can't just turn around and say, "Oh yeah, well I'll just use this and apply it to that." That kind of smacks of a little bit of appropriation and the concept of, well, sure, it's all Celtic anyway. Celtic is not a people. Celtic is not a tribe. Celtic is an academic term to describe a number of different cultural people all across Western Europe who had similar linguistic trends, and that's why we get this Q Celtic and P Celtic breakdown. And even now, more modern linguistic studies are saying the Irish, Proto-Irish, the older forms of Irish, have less in common with Celtic languages than it does with Finnish, which is a completely non-Celtic language. So, to what I would say, and this is to try and provide some bridging, I guess. Like I've turned around and said, listen, there is mythological precedence, there is historical precedence, but I'm still saying no. You can't just take one thing and use it to apply to another thing because there is nuance in Scotland. There must be. There must be elements of the landscape there that speak to the culture. There must be elements of the language that speak to its people. And so if we are following a pagan path, we acknowledge the existence of multiple deities. Yes, we believe in introspection and meditation and higher spiritual selves, but we also believe and hold reverence for the land and the environment in which we live. And the land and the environment of Scotland is different land and environment to Ireland. Again, similarities maybe in certain parts, but you can't just say, ah, well, it's all just one and why not? Because you're missing the nuances and the variations and the roots of experience and spiritual expression that come from being a people embedded in an environment, a people embedded in a landscape. And so what I would say is to give some maybe pathway or positive look here, explore the tools that are available to us. Absolutely. Go into like the Celt project on UCC, the University College Cork. You can look at the mythology, you can search for Alba, you can look for all of the references that we have. The story of either people from Ireland going to Alba to carry on their studies in Druidry and sorcery, and people like going to teach in Alba for Druidry. There's warriors who come from Alba who join many conflicts in Ireland as well. And so there are many different correlations and crossovers that someone can explore, taking the history and exploring the history of Scotland unique in itself, and then seeing how that might align with some of the same experiences as Irish people and the culture and how that might manifest as a people is a way to go about it. Taking on board, say, Laura O'Brien's guided journey method, which is a unique, specific practice that Laura created in order to address and explore your inner self and your identity as an individual and then as a spiritual entity, but then to push it that one step further into exploring the spiritual landscape, really building up on those tool sets doesn't mean that that has to be specifically applied only to what Laura tells you to do and what not to do. But you could apply it to exploring the broader world around you from a spiritual context. I would say give props where props come from, show respect and show credit. So if you are engaging in a guided journey meditation practice from Laura, be aware that, you're taking teaching from one particular culture and trying to use it to access another culture. So you may have boundaries, you may have difficulties. It might not be as smooth and as easy as exploring Irish spirituality through an Irish native lens. So, as I said, it's not an easily answered question. And as I said, we get it time and again. People do their DNA studies and like, or they chase their family line back and it's like, oh, I'm X amount Scottish, or I know my great great granddad came from, like even me, my dad's mom was from Scotland. I'm quarter Scottish in that way, if or an eighth Scottish. I don't know. He always said that she was from Glasgow and she was a boxer. And Nana Mary was, yeah, solid woman. My dad has my mom's build, or has his mom's build, which means I guess in some way I do too. Um, but yeah, like Scottish ancestry is not so far away from us, but respecting the differences and the uniqueness of a culture, regardless of finding a similarity in Irish paganism, is something that really should be done. So learn the tools, learn about paganism, learn about pagan practices, learn about making offerings. There are some like learn about magical practices and securing yourself through the tools and skills that we can teach, but then accept the fact that there will also be a lot of learning to do when you're approaching Scottish culture, Scottish history, Scottish landscape, Scottish environment, because it's not going to be the same as Ireland. So, interesting question. Not an easily one answered, but a great one to explore. And I'm really grateful to all the people who do come and ask us that questions. As I said, God's willing in the future, there will be pagan education all across the world and unique native cultures that are unique and native to their spaces. And we will be able to respect and honor those practices and not just be spiritually colonized in some way. As ever, if you'd like to know more, check out more content here on YouTube. If you want to know more about like guided journey and guided practices, irishpaganschool.com, search for guided journeys or journeys. You'll find some free classes there to get you started. Then there's also deeper classes to dive in and build up that tool set of spiritual exploration. If you can't dive into a paid class, no problem. Go to irishpagan.school/free. You could do something every week, and we have over 2 years worth of content if you were to do something every week. So do look after yourself, take care of yourself, and until next time, slán and goodbye.